He may never say it out loud, but every man has a secret world of desire that most women never see. Not because he's hiding it, but because he's afraid it might be misunderstood. What if I told you the fantasies men really have aren't always about wild passion or physical thrill, but about something much deeper, something emotional, vulnerable, and surprisingly intimate? Once you understand this, you'll never look at a man the same way again. Most people assume that a man's sexual fantasy revolves purely around the physical, graphic images, intense acts, or wild scenarios. But what many women don't realize is that a large number of male fantasies are rooted in something far more psychological, the desire for emotional power dynamics. And no, this doesn't mean domination in the stereotypical aggressive way. It's actually the opposite. It's about feeling wanted so intensely, so unapologetically, that it almost disarms him. A man fantasizes about a moment where a woman takes the lead, not to overpower him, but to express how much she craves him, not just for his body, but for his presence, his energy, his masculinity. That role reversal, where she becomes the initiator of desire, flips the script in his head and makes him feel like the most attractive man alive. In a world where men are expected to always initiate, to always make the first move, to always chase, the idea of a woman stepping into that space, even temporarily, becomes incredibly magnetic. It sends a subconscious message. You are so desirable to me, I can't wait for you to make the move. I want you now. That kind of energy touches something deep inside a man's identity, far beyond lust. It feeds his need to feel chosen, and not just chosen once, but over and over again, without prompting, without asking, without earning it by doing or saying something first. The fantasy lies in the power shift, but not because he wants to feel powerless. It's because he wants to feel safe surrendering, safe knowing that the woman he desires doesn't just accept him, she actively wants him. It's a moment where he's no longer performing, no longer pursuing, but simply receiving. And that doesn't make him weak. It actually makes him feel stronger, more grounded, more validated as a man, because in that space, he feels seen, not just as a provider, not just as someone with responsibilities, but as a man who still has the power to evoke raw, unfiltered desire in someone he cares about. This isn't about sex being wild or extreme. This is about presence. When a woman looks at him in a certain way or touches him in a way that says, I know exactly what I want and it's you, it bypasses every wall he's ever put up. And in that moment, something powerful shifts. His desire to impress disappears. His need to lead fades. What's left is pure connection, electric, unspoken, and unforgettable. And of course, she's not what's left unspoken, unforgettable. The emotional charge behind a woman taking control is often far more thrilling than the act itself. It's not just about variety or novelty, it's about validation, it's about reassurance, it's about a deep, almost primal need to be wanted, loudly, clearly, and without condition. There's a quiet truth that lives inside most men, one they rarely speak about, and often don't know how to express, even if they wanted to. It's the fantasy of being vulnerable, fully, completely, and without fear of judgment. It sounds simple, but in a world where men are told from a young age to toughen up, to be strong, to man up, the idea of emotional exposure can feel as dangerous as it is tempting. And yet, behind the surface of strength, behind the control and confidence, many men long for a moment where they can let go of the armor and just be. Not because they're broken, but because they're human. This fantasy isn't about being rescued or fixed, it's about safety, emotional safety. It's the dream of lying next to a woman, not saying anything clever, not being funny, not trying to impress, just being allowed to exist in his rawest form. The idea that he can cry without her pulling away or silently resenting him for not being the strong one. That he can talk about fears, insecurities, doubts, without her seeing him as weak or less masculine. It's the fantasy of being seen and still being wanted, of not having to wear a mask to be loved. So much of what men show to the world is filtered. Even their confidence is sometimes just a performance of what they think they're supposed to be. But underneath that, there's a desire to be fully known, to not have to fake certainty, to admit when they're lost or unsure and be met with understanding, not distance. And the fantasy is that in those moments, the woman beside them doesn't lose attraction. She leans in closer. She doesn't try to fix it. She just listens. She becomes a mirror that says, "You don't have to be anything else for me. You are already enough." This kind of space is rare. Men are used to being praised when they're composed, admired when they're achieving, respected when they're in control. But they're rarely celebrated when they're soft, and so the fantasy grows, a private daydream where someone sees behind the curtain and doesn't flinch, where vulnerability becomes intimacy, not a threat, where he doesn't have to rebound instantly or act like everything is okay or keep pretending he's unfazed. In that fantasy, he is allowed to be held, not just physically, but emotionally, held in his truth, in his mess, in his silence. For many men, that's more intimate than sex, more naked than being unclothed. It's the space where real trust begins, and trust, for men, often leads to deeper love, deeper connection, and ultimately a kind of emotional closeness that becomes unforgettable. Not because he was strong the whole time, but because he was allowed not to be. There's something deeply overlooked when it comes to understanding what men crave, not just physically, but emotionally and psychologically. One of the most powerful fantasies men carry isn't about the act itself, but about how they're seen. It's about being admired in ways that often go unspoken. Men fantasize about being noticed, praised, and validated, not just for their looks or performance, but for how they make a woman feel. They dream of being seen as the one who excites her emotionally, mentally, and intimately. It's not about inflated ego. It's about feeling valued in a way that sinks into the soul. Imagine being in a space where a woman looks at him with that unmistakable gaze of desire, not a casual glance, but a look that says, "You're everything I want right now." That moment, that unspoken admiration becomes a fantasy that replays itself again and again in a man's mind. Men are rarely told they're beautiful, sexy, magnetic, and yet they long to hear it, to feel it. They want to be someone's obsession. Not in a chaotic way, but in a way that feels grounding, a way that says, "You make me feel things I didn't know I could feel." It's easy to assume that men are confident by default, but a surprising number of men walk through life doubting if they're truly enough. They wonder if their efforts go unnoticed, if their presence matters, if they're attractive beyond the surface. So when admiration is given to them without being earned through performance, when it's offered freely, sincerely, and often, it cuts through the noise of all those doubts. It becomes a kind of emotional oxygen. And many men fantasize about being in a relationship where they don't have to prove themselves constantly just to be loved or desired. They want to hear that they make her feel safe, that the way they touch, the way they show up, the way they look at her, it all lingers in her mind long after they've parted ways, that they make her smile when she's alone, that her friends envy the way she speaks about him. These words, these affirmations, they go deeper than most realize, because men, just like women, carry emotional wounds. They've been compared, they've been overlooked, they've questioned their worth in quiet moments, and in their fantasy, all of that is silenced by a voice that tells them, "You stand out. You matter. You're the one I can't stop thinking about." Men don't just want praise for their status or achievements. They want to be admired for who they are when they're alone with her, without the titles, without the performance, without the filter. In their fantasy, admiration isn't a reward, it's regular language. And when they imagine that level of affirmation, it doesn't just excite them, it heals them. Because it reminds them that their presence isn't just tolerated or appreciated, it's adored. And for many men, that quiet sense of being deeply seen is the most powerful desire they never say out loud. There's a part of intimacy that doesn't rely on movement, words, or even sound. It lives in the stillness, the kind of quiet that speaks louder than any physical act ever could. Men, though often misunderstood as craving only high-intensity, fast-paced encounters, actually hold a deep and often hidden fantasy about connection through stillness. They imagine a moment where everything slows down, where the chaos of the outside world fades, and what's left is two people fully present with one another. No rush, no performance, just silence and sensation. In that fantasy, she doesn't fill the space with words or questions. She lets her energy do the talking. A lingering gaze, a soft breath, a touch that doesn't demand but invites. And he's not expected to lead, to speak, or to impress. He's simply allowed to feel. The silence becomes its own kind of communication, a rhythm that says you're safe here. That permission to just be, without expectation or commentary, unlocks something deep within him. Because the truth is, many men are exhausted. Not physically, but mentally. Always trying to get it right. Always trying to keep her engaged. Always trying to read what she wants. But in this kind of quiet moment, none of that is needed. There's no guessing, no need to anticipate the next move. He's just present, and so is she. Men fantasize about that eye contact, the kind that holds him still, not because he's told to stop, but because the moment is too full to move. The way she looks at him tells him she's not thinking about anything else. That look becomes a fantasy he doesn't even know he craves until he experiences it. It's a rare space where his body isn't just being touched, it's being understood. He's not being pulled into intensity, he's being pulled into presence, and it's one of the most grounding feelings he can have. That kind of silent connection isn't boring to him, it's magnetic. It makes him feel like more than just a partner, it makes him feel like he's known. It reminds him that he's not just there to provide or perform, he's there to be felt, to be received, to be mirrored. That fantasy is filled with small, nearly invisible moments, the kind where nothing big is happening, but everything meaningful is. The slow way she breathes when he's close, the way her body moves gently with his, the way her fingers trace his skin without rushing. It's not about how far it goes or how long it lasts. It's about how deeply he's seen and how safe he feels in the quiet. In those moments, a man doesn't just feel connected, he feels chosen, not for his strength or his skills, but for his energy, his soul, his essence. And that kind of connection, silent, electric, and rare, is one of the most powerful fantasies he holds close, even if he never says a word about it. There's a quiet but powerful fantasy that lives inside many men, and most women never even realize it exists. It's not about an act, a position, or a setting. It's about meaning. It's about being the one who left a mark so deep no one else ever quite measures up. Men fantasize about being different, not just better in bed, but emotionally unforgettable. They want to be the one who made her feel something no one else could. It's a silent competition with every ghost from her past, not out of jealousy or insecurity, but because significance matters. Men don't just want to be desired in the moment, they want to be remembered, burned into her memory so completely that even years later no one else compares. This fantasy isn't about ego in the way people think. It's about impact. It's about legacy. Men want to know they weren't just another experience, another chapter, another body. They want to be the story she still thinks about when no one's watching. It could be the way he kissed her, the way he made her laugh mid-touch, the way he paused just to look at her, making her feel like the only woman in the world. He fantasizes that she talks about him differently to her friends, that there's something about him she just can't explain, something that sticks, something that lingers. And here's the deeper truth. This fantasy isn't limited to physical connection. It's also emotional. Men want to be the one who made her feel seen in a way she didn't know she needed. They imagine her comparing new connections to the one they had, not out loud, but in her mind, silently realizing that no one else hits quite as deep, that even if others are nice or hot or charming, they lack something. They don't have that unspoken connection, that wild energy, that grounding presence. Men want to be that measurement, the one every future man is subconsciously judged against. This fantasy often grows stronger when a man feels deeply connected to a woman, especially if he senses she's had other significant relationships. He doesn't just want to match them, he wants to be unforgettable in a way they never were, not through gifts or grand gestures, but through presence. He wants to be the one who made her feel safe and desired at the same time, the one who knew what she needed before she said a word, the one who made her feel more like herself than she ever had with anyone else. Even the most confident man at his core wants this. He wants to matter. He wants to leave a feeling behind that no one else can replicate. And the irony is, most men won't ever say this out loud. It's too vulnerable, too revealing. But it's there, in the way he watches her, in the way he listens, in the way he tries to give her an experience that feels like more than just connection. The way he tries to give her an experience that feels like more than just connection. It's his way of saying, I don't want to just be someone you liked. I want to be the one who changed the way you see men. That's the fantasy. Not being remembered for how wild things got, but for how deep it felt, for how complete the moment was, for how she couldn't put it into words, even if she tried. And every time she finds herself comparing, even if she doesn't mean to, even if she tries not to, he wins. He becomes the benchmark, and in his fantasy, that feeling never fades. There's a fantasy that plays on repeat in the minds of many men, and it's one most women underestimate. It doesn't involve grand gestures, complicated scenarios, or intense build-up. It's simple, yet electric. The fantasy of her surprising him with intimacy. Not because she's expected to, not because he asked, not because the moment was leading somewhere, but because she wanted to. On her own, with no prompting. That kind of initiation does more than spark physical desire. It sends a message that hits him deep in his emotional core. It says, "You're desired," in a language he rarely hears, but deeply needs. Men are used to being the ones who reach out first. They start the conversation, they make the move, they test the waters. It's almost programmed into them from the beginning, to chase, to lead, to carry the pressure of creating attraction. And with that comes a quiet weight, a fear of being too much, or worse, not enough. So when a woman flips that script, even once, it feels like freedom when she leans in first, touches his chest with that look in her eyes, or whispers something soft and bold into his ear. It's not just sexy, it's affirming. It tells him he doesn't have to earn her attention every time. He already has it. What makes this fantasy powerful isn't just the act itself, but the surprise. It's catching him off guard in the best possible way. It's a moment that tells him she was thinking about him, that he's been on her mind and she couldn't wait. That kind of spontaneity goes beyond arousal. It touches something sensitive, something that reminds him he's still wanted, in the way he secretly worries he's not. Because even confident men have moments where they wonder if the spark is still there, if they're still exciting, if she still sees them the way she used to. One moment of unplanned initiation can erase those doubts in an instant. Men fantasize about this happening when they least expect it. Maybe he's had a rough day, maybe his mind is somewhere else, maybe he's not even thinking about anything romantic. And then there she is, soft, intentional, playful, close, not demanding anything, just giving, just wanting, just reminding him through her actions that he's still the one she craves. And it's not just about touch. It's the tone in her voice, the timing, the way she enters his space like she belongs there. In that moment, she becomes the fantasy, not because of what she does, but because of why she's doing it. It's not obligation, it's not routine, it's raw desire. This kind of initiation doesn't need to be flashy. In fact, the smaller the moment, the deeper it often lands. A subtle glance across the room, a quiet come here when they're alone, a hand on his back when he's focused on something else. These are the moments that lodge themselves in his memory, because they're unexpected, because they're rare, and because they make him feel chosen, not just tolerated, not just accepted, but actively wanted. And that's the real core of this fantasy. It's not about sex, it's about significance. It's about feeling like he doesn't have to prove himself, chase her approval, or perform to be worthy of her touch. It's about knowing that even when life gets busy, even when things feel routine, she still sees him. She still wants him. And she's not afraid to show it first. That single gesture of surprise initiation tells a man something he may not even know he needed to hear. You matter. I choose you, and I want you, without needing a reason. So when we talk about male sexual fantasies, it's easy to reduce them to cliches, wild, physical, and surface level. But the truth is far deeper, far more emotional than most people realize. These fantasies aren't just about pleasure, they're about connection, about being seen, desired, admired, and remembered in ways that go far beyond the bedroom. Whether it's the thrill of a woman taking the lead, the safety of emotional vulnerability, the power of silent connection, or the deep craving to be unforgettable, what men really want is to feel chosen, without condition and without having to ask for it. They want to be wanted for more than what they do. They want to be wanted for who they are. And when a woman taps into that, when she shows him that kind of desire and presence, she doesn't just fulfill a fantasy. She creates a bond he'll never forget.